Hey guys, Sneaky Kitty Game Dev here, and in the last video of this series, what we ended up doing was we changed this fire rate RPM default value at runtime, which allowed us to simply come back, compile, and save. And I mentioned the purposes and the reasons and the uses for this. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video is kind of correcting the limitations that I discussed in the last one, and that is we're kind of limited here with this setup by using the default types, or booleans, numeric, and strings. So for example, if I change this to f struct property like so for things like vectors, transforms, rotators, etc., you're kind of screwed. Well, not necessarily screwed, but you're limited to how you can really use it. So what we want to do in this video is actually set it up to modify the properties directly. So we're going through and we're using the lovely source of memory to change. So what we're going to do is basically we have the exact same setup. We don't have to do really anything special, but in this case, I want to do a vector. So the vector that I want to modify in this case, we'll do the shoulder stock offset. Actually, I have a zero. Yeah, we'll do a transform because I know I have a zeroed out one by default. So we'll do this first person base pose offset. So kind of like I have already done just because I know it's zeroed out. So if I look at it here, it's just a zeroed out transform, nothing special. So we can see a change immediately. So we're going to do that. So what we want to do is we know it's a transform. So let's go ahead and change the type to f transform for this function. And from here, we can go through and set up the type, or I guess you could say access it directly. So we don't need to worry about casting or anything like that, because instead we're just going to use the default return type, which is f property. So f property, and we're going to wrap it in an if statement to make sure that we actually get it. And from here, we can go through and get a pointer to the type. So what I mean by that is if, I'll actually just show you, property, let's see, value, container pointer to value pointer is what we want. So this is the templated type, so we can convert it to be of whatever type we want, such as a transform, a vector, whatever it is that you're going to actually be using. So in this case, I want to transform, so I want to convert it to a f transform. Then from here, we want to set f transform. In this case, we're doing a pointer to it, so let's call this one transform. Set it to equal it, and then we need the actual little quick, all right, fine. So we can see the parameter takes in the object. So what is it that we want to actually use? So in this case, we're going to use the default object, like so. And then from here, we should be able to access, well, we basically have direct access to whatever property name we want to use that is of the type f transform that we can do anything with. So for example, if I do transform dot set location, or sorry, keep forgetting it's a pointer, and do f vector a one vector, this will change that property to have the location of a one vector. So in our case, we already have our, our new transform. So we're just going to do new value dot get location. And I'll go ahead and do the rotation too. So transform set rotation, new value dot get rotation, and why not scale? So transform set scale 3D, new value, get scale 3D, just like so. So we call it the same exact way. I'm going to go ahead and close down the editor and relaunch. Alrighty, so we're back here. I'm going to go ahead and actually reset the fire rate. And if we look down, here we have our first person base pose offset. So this is what we want to actually, alter in this video. So I'm going to copy the name here, first person base pose offset. Head over to here. I need to refresh it. So property name is going to be first person base pose offset. I'm going to split the struct of the new value, and I'll give it a location of 10. And we'll just do the y as 40. Wrong button. We'll do 45. So, and we'll do 20 is way too much. We'll do 5 on the x. So 5, 0, 10, 0, 45, 0. So this is what, well, that is what should be applied to here when we run it. So let's hit play, press 5, go ahead and call the function, and let's look at the M4. So we have 5, 0, 10. 0, 45, 0. So if I hit compile and hit play again, you can see the base pose offset is definitely taking effect. It is very nice and ugly. So that's how you can modify different, well, in this case, structures. So this works for basically any type. So for example, if you had a f vector, you can probably figure it out by now. So we would just do f vector like so, and just set the, let's rename this one to vector. We can just set the vector to equal f vector, like something like a 1 vector or something like that. You really kind of go through and you just do it in the same manner. So this actually goes through, and it's the same thing for your own custom data types. So really all you do is you just modify the properties that you want inside of the structure, and you're kind of, good to go. So that's really all I can think of for this anyways. Or sorry, I just realized 1 vector. You can't quite do this necessarily because remember, this is a pointer. So you're going to want to actually modify the values directly. So for example, you take x, you set that equal to 1. You take y, you set that equal to 1 if you want to do a 1 vector, and then same thing for z, so on and so on. Yeah, it's not really too much to it. I'm going to try to finish up what I was doing before, and I will show you the end result of what you would get with a system like this. So hopefully I'll see you again here in a second. Alrighty, I went ahead and finished up my example use case, and I can kind of show you what I meant. So for reference, here I have my poses, my base pose, sprint pose, high port, low port, etc. And when I hit play, here's my base pose, here's my high port, here's my low port, and here's my sprint pose. So let's say I want to change these. So I go into that little widget that I already made, and let's change the base pose to like 10. You can see it modifies all that. I'm not going to do that because it does affect other poses. So we're going to look at the sprint pose, and let's make this a little bit higher, so something like 5, and we'll do 30, 55, something like that. And then, yeah, something along those lines. So basically what I would do is I would just hit save poses, like so. And when I close it and go back to the M4, you can see the sprint pose now has those values. So 30 and negative 55 and 5. Same thing goes if I had modified the high port pose. It would have the modified high port pose here. Same thing with the low port pose. It would automate it. So now when I hit play, my other poses are still the same, but my sprint pose is now higher and a little bit at a different angle. So you can kind of get a rough idea on, some of the use cases of it. So let's see, I don't want anything for the sprint pose. I don't remember if those were correct or not. So hopefully that just reverted them back. I think it was a little to the left. Oh well, I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, that's one example use case for it. So you go through, you make your own little, I guess you could say, tools for the designers to use and make use of. And, you allow it to just work. So if I change this one to a 0 and I hit save poses, if I hit compile on the M4 now and I go to high port, you can see that is now the new high port pose. So it has a lot of use cases and can greatly speed up some of the stuff that you are trying to do. So for example, in this case, with a lot of firearms, you're looking at a lot of work instead of going constantly back and forth trying to find values that you like, or doing what I did previously where I had the widget and I would save them all to a file, and then you would copy and paste those values over from the file and do it that way. This is also just drastically faster. So anyways, that wraps up this video, and I'll see you in the next one. If you like what I'm doing and you want to help support me, you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below, where I have a Team Deathmatch series and a Conquest Game Mode series available. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to join my Discord that's also linked down below, and I'll try to help you out. So, I'll see you in the next one.